A SolarPunk reading of the Pacifica Constitution. Introduction. When law learns to photosynthesize. SolarPunk is often misunderstood as an aesthetic, a palette of greens, soft futurist architecture, community gardens on rooftops, and artisanal solar panels nestled into convivial streetscapes. But at its core, SolarPunk is a civilizational thesis, a wager that humanity can become technologically advanced without becoming ecologically suicidal, that freedom can expand alongside care, that abundance need not require domination, and that optimism, when grounded in systems design rather than wishful thinking, can be revolutionary. The Constitution of Pacifica is not a SolarPunk document by name. It does not speak in the idiom of speculative fiction or utopian manifestos. It is, unmistakably, a constitutional instrument, dense, procedural, juridical, and forged in the long shadow of historical tyranny. And yet, when read through a SolarPunk lens, Pacifica emerges as something rare, a legal framework that already contains the structural DNA of a SolarPunk society. This article offers three things. 1. A SolarPunk reading of the Pacifica Constitution, interpreting its deepest commitments not as reactive libertarianism or green technocracy, but as regenerative post-scarcity republicanism. 2. A proposed SolarPunk-specific enhancement to the preamble, clarifying and strengthening the Constitution's ecological, regenerative, and cultural commitments without betraying its foundational principles. 3. A fictional future timeline written from within a mature SolarPunk civilization that adopted the Pacifica Constitution as one of its foundational charters, reflecting back on what it enabled, what it constrained, and what it made possible. This is not propaganda. It is a work of interpretive political ecology. SolarPunk as political philosophy, not vibe. SolarPunk sits at the intersection of several intellectual lineages. Ecological systems theory, humans as participants, not masters. Post-scarcity economics, abundance through coordination, not extraction. Municipalism and bioregionalism, governance scaled to ecosystems. Open source epistemology, knowledge as a commons. Radical optimism, the refusal to surrender the future to cynicism. What distinguishes SolarPunk from earlier utopian traditions is its anti-naivete. SolarPunk does not deny conflict, entropy, or power. It insists instead that power must be redesigned, entropy managed, and conflict metabolized rather than suppressed. This is where Pacifica becomes relevant. Pacifica does not imagine a perfect society. It imagines a self-correcting one. 2. The Pacifica Constitution as a SolarPunk artifact. 1. Bioregional sovereignty over abstract nationalism. SolarPunk fiction repeatedly rejects the nation-state as an organizing unit, favoring watersheds, climates, foodsheds, and cultural ecologies. The Pacifica Constitution explicitly embraces pro-municipalism and bio-regional autonomy, allowing governance to emerge from lived ecological reality rather than imposed borders. This is a decisive SolarPunk move. In practice, it means laws adapt to ecosystems. Energy systems mirror geography. Culture is local without being parochial. Pacifica treats territory not as conquered space but as inhabited relationship. 2. Post-scarcity as a constitutional obligation. SolarPunk societies are not ascetic. They are abundant, but abundance is defined as sufficiency for all, not excess for some. The Pacifica Constitution commits the state to meeting Maslowian needs and actively pursuing post-scarcity conditions. This is neither capitalist growth ideology nor command economy centralism. It is a moral economy of sufficiency, aligned with distributist and commons-based thought. In SolarPunk terms, this reframes prosperity as time, health, ecological stability, cultural richness, autonomy. The Constitution does not promise luxury. It promises freedom from manufactured deprivation. 3. Open source governance and the right to fork power. One of SolarPunk's most radical commitments is epistemic, no black boxes. Pacifica's insistence on open source governance, auditable algorithms, transparent institutions, and the public's right to fork or retire systems is profoundly SolarPunk. It transforms governance from an opaque hierarchy into a participatory infrastructure. This is not digital fetishism. It is democratic metabolism. In SolarPunk societies, legitimacy does not flow from authority, it emerges from comprehensibility. 4. Material culture as ethics made visible. Where most constitutions remain silent on material life, Pacifica intervenes directly. Organic, renewable materials. Local food systems. Anti-hostile architecture. Human-scaled infrastructure. SolarPunk insists that values must be embodied. Pacifica legislates embodiment. Buildings, roads, textiles, and networks become moral texts. A society that feeds hitchhikers, integrates food forests into transit corridors, and refuses hostile design is not merely green, it is civilizationally generous. 5. Cybernetics without domination. SolarPunk does not reject advanced technology, it rejects unaccountable technology. Pacifica's model of cybernetic governance, feedback-driven, transparent, human-supervised, aligns with the best traditions of systems ecology rather than the nightmares of technocracy. Technology becomes a partner, not a ruler. 3. Revolutionary spirit. Why this constitution is dangerous. The Pacifica Constitution is revolutionary not because it promises upheaval, but because it makes tyranny structurally difficult. Its revolution is slow, systemic, and regenerative. It threatens extractive elites, bureaucratic opacity, artificial scarcity, centralized coercion. SolarPunk revolutions do not storm palaces. They obsolete them. Pacifica does this by distributing power so widely, transparently, and locally that domination becomes energetically inefficient. IV. Proposed SolarPunk enhancement to the preamble. Draft edition. The Regenerative Covenant. Greater than we, the people of Pacifica, recognizing that humanity is not separate from nature but a conscious expression within it, acknowledging that our liberty is inseparable from the health of the living systems that sustain us, affirming that prosperity without regeneration is merely delayed collapse, and understanding that care, maintenance, and stewardship are as vital to freedom as resistance and defense. Do hereby commit ourselves and our institutions to the perpetual regeneration of the ecological, social, and cultural commons upon which all life depends, to the design of technologies that heal rather than dominate, to the cultivation of abundance through cooperation rather than extraction, to the honoring of future generations as present stakeholders, and to the practice of governance not merely as restraint against tyranny, but as an instrument for collective flourishing. We declare that the measure of our success shall not be accumulation, but resilience, not growth alone, but harmony, not power over others, but power with one another and with the living world. This edition does not negate Pacifica's original preamble. It photosynthesizes it. V. A fictional SolarPunk future timeline. Written in the year 2147, Pacifica by origin. Excerpt from Civic Gardens, A History of Regenerative Law. Greater than when we study the early Pacifica Constitution, we are struck not by its perfection, but by its humility. It did not claim to know the future. It only insisted that the future remain corrigible. 2030-2045, the transitional decades. Pacifica was first adopted piecemeal, municipal charters, regional compacts, experimental zones. Critics dismissed it as utopian libertarianism. Environmentalists were skeptical, so were socialists, so were conservatives. And yet, the systems worked. Local energy cooperatives stabilized grids. Open source governance reduced corruption. Food security increased as food forests replaced lawns and highways softened into living corridors. The Constitution's refusal of hostile architecture quietly transformed cities. 2045-2070, the regenerative turn. Climate shocks intensified. Centralized states struggled. Pacifica-aligned regions adapted faster, not because they were richer, but because they were locally intelligent. Governance became a daily practice rather than a distant ritual. Children learned civic literacy alongside ecology. Maintenance became prestigious work. The SolarPunk amendment to the preamble was ratified in 2058, formalizing what had already become cultural reality. 2070-2100, post-scarcity maturation. By the end of the century, Pacifica regions no longer measured success by GDP. They tracked ecosystem health, time affluence, civic participation, intergenerational well-being. Technology was everywhere, but invisible, quiet, and accountable. 2100-2147, looking back. Greater than Pacifica did not save the world alone. No constitution could. But it taught us something vital, that law can be alive, that freedom can be ecological, and that optimism, when written into systems rather than slogans, can endure. Conclusion, law that learns how to grow. A SolarPunk reading of the Pacifica Constitution reveals something rare in political history, a legal framework that does not mistake control for order, nor extraction for prosperity. Pacifica is not a finished utopia. It is a scaffold for one. In an era defined by collapsed narratives, that may be its most revolutionary act, to insist, in painstaking legal detail, that a livable future is not only imaginable, but buildable. SolarPunk is often accused of being too hopeful. Pacifica replies. Hope, when structured, is policy.